The letter arrived on a Tuesday, carried by a courier who looked as weathered as the yellowed envelope he handed me. My name was written in elaborate cursive, the kind nobody uses anymore. Miss Eleanor Pierce. Inside I found news that would change my life forever. I had narrated a house from a great aunt I'd never known existed. Standing before 47 Maple Street now, I understand why the lawyer had smiled so strangely when he handed me the keys. The Victorian mansion looms against the gray October sky, its weathered facade a testament to years of isolation. Twisted ivy crawls up the walls like gnarled fingers, and the windows, there must be dozens, stare down at me like hollow eyes. The key feels impossibly heavy in my hand. It takes 3 attempts to open the front door, the metal scraping against decades of disuse. The hinges protest with a sound that sets my teeth on edge, and I step into what feels like another century. The foyer is grand, or at least it must have been once. A crystal chandelier hangs overhead, draped in cobwebs that dance in the draft from the open door. The air smells of old wood, dust, and something else. Something sweet and unfamiliar, like dried flowers mixed with decay. My footsteps echo on the hardwood floors as I move deeper into the house. Each board seems to have its own voice. Some creak in high-pitched protests, others groan deeply like old men rising from comfortable chairs. In the gathering dusk, shadows stretch across the walls, cast by elaborate wainscoting and ornate doorframes that speak of craftsmanship long forgotten. "Hello?" I call out, more from instinct than expectation. My voice sounds small in the vastness of the space. The house answers with its own language of settling sounds, the tick of cooling pipes, the whisper of wind through unseen gaps, the subtle shifting of old timber adjusting to my presence. The grand staircase curves up to the second floor, its banister smooth beneath a layer of dust. I run my hand along it as I climb, leaving a clean trail in my wake. 17 steps. I count them automatically, the way I've counted steps since childhood. The second floor is a maze of closed doors, but something draws me toward the end of the hall, where a narrow staircase leads up to what must be the attic. These stairs are narrower, steeper, and their protests are louder. 14 steps this time, each one more vocal than the last. The attic door is smaller than the others, and when I push it open, the hinges sing a high, clear note that makes me shiver. The attic is a forest of shadows, broken by shafts of light streaming through small dormer windows. Dust motes dance in these beams like tiny stars, and the air is thick with the smell of old paper and leather. Trunks and boxes create a maze of forgotten memories, and in one corner, a stack of leather-bound books catches my eye. They're journals, I realize as I kneel beside them. Dozens of them, their spines cracked and faded with age. I pick up the topmost volume, and a slip of paper falls from between its pages. The handwriting matches that on the envelope that brought me here. My dearest Eleanor, if you're reading this, then you've found your way home at last. A sound makes me freeze, something in the walls, a scratch perhaps, or a shuffle, like something moving inside them. I hold my breath, listening. The sound comes again, clearer this time, a distinct tap, 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 as if someone or something is trying to get my attention. The journal trembles slightly in my hands as I open it to the first page. The date at the top reads October 14, 1887, and below it, "There are things about this house that cannot be explained. Things that should not be explained. But you, my dear great-niece, deserve to know the truth." Another tap sounds, closer now, and as I begin to read, I can't shake the feeling that I'm not alone in this room, that somewhere in the shadows between the walls, something is watching, waiting, and perhaps, just perhaps, welcoming me home. The sun is setting now, casting long shadows through the dormer windows, and I know I should go back downstairs, find the light switches, and begin making this place habitable. But the journal holds me captive, and the gentle tapping in the walls has taken on a rhythm that almost sounds like words. The first journal entry is dated October 14, 1887, written in my great-aunt's precise handwriting. As twilight deepens outside the attic windows, I pull my sweater tighter and lean closer to the pages, using my phone's flashlight to illuminate the faded ink. Today marks our 3rd week in the house. Herbert insists the noises are merely the settling of old wood, but I've lived in old houses before. These sounds, they have purpose. They have pattern. Sometimes when I wake in the darkest hours of night, I could swear they form words. A floorboard creaks behind me, and I whirl around, heart pounding. Nothing but shadows. Yet, as I turn back to the journal, I notice something odd about the wallpaper near the dormer window. A pattern I hadn't seen before. In the beam of my flashlight, the faded flowers seem to spiral in ways that defy their printed design, creating shapes that look almost like faces. I shake my head and return to the journal. More entries follow, detailing the lives of previous occupants. There was the original owner, Theodore Pierce, who built the house in 1850. His wife, Margaret, who disappeared one winter night, leaving only a set of footprints that led to the garden gate and vanished. Their daughter, Catherine, who spoke of friends in the walls until her parents sent her to live with relatives. The sudden sound of whistling from outside startles me from my reading. Through the dirty window, I spot a figure moving among the overgrown hedges. My heart leaps into my throat until I remember the lawyer mentioning a groundskeeper. Even so, I hadn't expected anyone at this hour. I make my way downstairs, forcing myself not to run when the tapping in the walls begins again, following my descent. The front door protests as I pull it open, and the cool evening air rushes in, carrying the scent of wet earth and decay. "Hello," I call out, stepping onto the porch. "I'm Eleanor Pierce, the new owner." The whistling stops. From around the corner comes a man who seems as much a part of the property as the ancient oaks that line the drive. He's older, in maybe 70, with a weathered face and eyes that remind me of pale sea glass. He's wearing old-fashioned work clothes that appear to have been mended countless times. "Miss Pierce," he says, touching the brim of his cap. "Walter Simmons. Been tending these grounds since before you were born." His voice has an odd quality, like distant thunder. "Didn't expect you so soon. Your great-aunt said you'd come, but—" He trails off, studying my face with an intensity that makes me uncomfortable. "I'm sorry, but I never knew my great-aunt," I say. "I only learned about her when I inherited the house." Walter's expression shifts subtly. "Nah, suppose you wouldn't have. Time works strange here at Maple Street. Miss Catherine was particular about when things should happen." Before I can ask what he means, a sound comes from inside the house, like someone walking across the floor above us. Walter doesn't seem to notice, but I can't help glancing back through the open door. The entrance hall is empty, yet I swear I see movement reflected in the age-spotted mirror on the far wall. "Best get inside, Miss Pierce," Walter says suddenly. "Sun's nearly down. House gets different after dark. I'll come by tomorrow, tell you what you need to know about the grounds." He turns to leave, then pauses. "And Miss Pierce, best not to read those journals alone at night. Some stories want company when they're told." I watch him disappear into the gathering darkness, his whistling resuming, a melody that sounds vaguely familiar, though I can't place it. When I turn back to the house, I freeze. The wallpaper in the entrance hall, barely visible in the dying light, has changed. The pattern I noticed upstairs is here too, but larger, more defined. What I thought were flowers now clearly form faces, dozens of them, their eyes seeming to follow my movement. My hand trembles as I reach for the light switch, but nothing happens when I flip it. Of course, the power must be off. I should have checked earlier. I should leave, find a hotel, come back in daylight. But the journal tucked under my arm seems to grow warmer, and somewhere above me, floorboards creak in a rhythm that sounds almost like footsteps. "My dearest Eleanor," my great-aunt had written, "if you read in this, then you've found your way home at last." Home! The word echoes in my mind as I close the front door, sealing myself inside with the darkness and the watching walls. The tap-tap-tapping resumes, and this time I'm certain it's spelling out words. I just need to learn how to listen. Morning arrived with a thin mist that clung to the ground like phantoms reluctant to fade. I hadn't slept. How could I, after what I'd seen in the wallpaper? Instead, I'd spent the night in the kitchen, the only room where the pattern seemed normal, waiting for dawn with my great-aunt's journals spread before me. Now, standing at the French doors that lead to the back garden, I can't help but think of Walter's warning about the house being different after dark. In daylight, it feels, well, not exactly normal, but less oppressive. The morning sun streams through one-washed windows, casting dappled shadows that dance across the floor like invitation. The door handles are cold under my fingers as I push them open. The hinges protest with a sound like distant crying, and the smell of wet earth and decay rushes in. The garden before me is a wilderness of neglect, yet there's something deliberate about its chaos. Paths that might once have been neatly graveled now wind like serpents through chest-high grass. Rose bushes have grown into thorny walls, their flowers black with age. And everywhere, scattered like forgotten sentinels, stand stone statues half hidden by creeping vines. I step out onto what remains of a brick patio, my boots crunching on dead leaves. The air feels different here, heavier, charged with something I can't quite name. A robin watches me from a twisted apple tree, its head cocked as if waiting to see what I'll do next. The nearest statue catches my eye. An angel, I think, though its features have been worn smooth by time and weather. Its wings spread wide, and its blank face seems to follow me as I move past. There's something clutched in its stone hands, pressed against its chest. I reach up to brush away the vines, revealing what looks like a book or perhaps a letter box. "The angels guide our secrets," my great-aunt had written in one of her later entries. Every statue in the garden holds something. The trick is knowing which ones to trust. Further into the garden, I find more statues. A child holding a ball, an old man on a bench, a woman with flowing robes who might be reading or weeping. It's hard to tell through the erosion. Each one seems positioned with purpose, creating sightlines and patterns I can only half perceive. Something glints in the soil near the woman statue. I kneel down, ignoring the dampness seeping through my jeans, and brush away dead leaves. It's the corner of what looks like a tin box, half buried in the earth. The metal is corroded, but the latch still works. Inside, protected by waxed paper, I find a stack of photographs. The first photo stops my breath. It shows this same garden, but vibrant with life and perfectly maintained. In the foreground stands a woman in Victorian dress, her face an exact mirror of my own. The date on the back reads, Summer, 1889. Below it, in that now familiar handwriting, no more busyness for her. There can be no wonder age 23. But that's impossible. That's my name, my age, and I look closer at the photo, at my face. Yet this picture is over a century old. A sound behind me makes me turn. Nothing there, just the angel statue, but wasn't it facing the other way before? The next photograph shows a gathering in the garden. Dozens of people in period dress, all standing around a central figure, a man in black, who seems to be conducting some kind of ceremony. Many of the faces are blurred, as if they were moving when the picture was taken, but those that are clear share a striking resemblance to the faces I saw on the wallpaper last night. Thunder rumbles in the distance, though the sky above remains clear. As I flip through more photographs, a pattern emerges. The same faces appear again and again, in different clothes, different eras, but unmistakably the same people. And in every group shot, there is someone who looks exactly like me, standing in exactly the same spot, wearing clothes from that period. Movement catches my eye. A flash of light between the trees at the far end of the garden. It looks like a lantern swaying gently, but who would be out there? I stand tucking the tin box under my arm, and that's when I notice the ground around me. The exposed soil where I dug up the box is dark like the rest of the earth. It's arranged in a pattern, a spiral of lighter-colored dirt that seems to ripple outward from where I stand. Another flash of light closer now. The robin has gone silent. All the birds have gone silent. The only sound is the whisper of wind through leaves, and underneath it, something else. Voices, maybe, speaking too softly to make out the words. "I see you've found the photographs." Walter's voice behind me makes me jump. He's standing by the angel statue, which is definitely facing a different direction now. Been wondering when those would turn up. "Walter," I try to keep my voice steady, "what is this place, these pictures? They can't be real, and that woman who looks like me?" "That's a story best told over tea," he interrupts, glancing at the darkening sky. "Local folks have their theories about this garden. Some say it's a gateway. Others say it's a gathering place. Old Mrs. Henley down at the market swears she's seen lights dancing among the statues at midnight and faces in the windows that belong to people long dead." He pauses, studying my face. "But those are just stories, of course, though I will say in all my years tending this place, I've never known the statues to stay facing the same way twice." Another flash of light catches my eye, and this time, Walter sees it too. His expression changes. "Best come inside now, Miss Pierce. Storm's coming, and anyway," he glances at the tin box under my arm. "You've found what you were meant to find today. The garden will show you more when it's ready." As we walk back to the house, I look over my shoulder one last time. All the statues are facing us now, their blank eyes watching our retreat. The angel's hands are empty, the box or book I'd seen earlier now gone, and in the growing darkness beneath the trees, lights dance like fireflies, spelling out words I almost understand. The photographs in the tin box feel warm against my side, and I swear I can hear them whispering, telling stories of garden parties and midnight gatherings, of ceremonies and secrets, of faces that never age, and stories that never end, stories that somehow I already know. Back in the kitchen, as Walter puts the kettle on, I spread the photographs across the table. In every single one, the woman who shares my face is looking directly at the camera, as if she knew someday I would be the one looking back, as if she had a message for me hidden in these images of a garden that seems to exist both in memory and in dream. Thunder rolls again, closer now, and the lights in the garden flare bright enough to be seen through the windows. Walter hands me a cup of tea, his expression unreadable. "Your great aunt used to say, 'Time moves differently in the garden,'" he says quietly. "That's why we never trim back the roses or clear away the old statues. Some things need to grow wild to keep their power." He takes a sip of his own tea, then adds, "But you already know that, don't you, Miss Pierce? After all, you've been here before." And the steam rising from my teacup forms shapes that look like dancing figures, and somewhere in the distance I hear music, the same melody Walter was whistling yesterday, the one I almost recognized. Now, finally, I remember where I've heard it before, in a dream I've had since childhood, about a garden where statues dance and time flows like water through cupped hands. A dream that, sitting here with the photographs spread before me in the garden darkness pressing against the windows, no longer feels like a dream at all. The photographs from the garden lay scattered across my great-aunt's kitchen table, their edges curling in the steam from my third cup of tea. Walter had left hours ago, his parting words still echoing in my mind. "You've been here before." The storm he predicted never came, but the sky remained dark, as if the clouds themselves were reluctant to leave. Tap, tap. The sound comes from inside the wall beside me. Clearer than ever before, 3 distinct taps, then silence, then 3 more. Not random settling sounds anymore. This is deliberate. I press my ear against the wallpaper, its pattern shifting beneath my touch. Tap, tap, tap. "Hello?" I whisper, feeling foolish even as I say it. The response is immediate, a series of rapid taps, like Morse code, moving up the wall toward the ceiling. Without thinking, I follow the sound, my fingers trailing along the wallpaper. The pattern seems to ripple under my touch, flowers and vines rearranging themselves to reveal something underneath. A seam in the wall I hadn't noticed before. My fingers find a slight depression, and when I press it, there's a soft click. A panel swings inward, revealing a narrow passage behind the wall. The air that rushes out is stale, but not unpleasant, carrying a faint scent of lavender and beeswax. I shouldn't go in. Everything I've ever read or watched tells me this is the moment the protagonist makes a terrible decision. But the tapping continues, moving deeper into the passage, and I find myself falling before I can think better of it. My phone's flashlight reveals wood-paneled walls and a floor worn smooth by countless feet. The passage is wider than it first appeared, allowing me to walk comfortably. Every few feet, small grills in the walls look out into various rooms of the house. This is how they watched, I realize. This is how they moved unseen through the house. But who were they, and why? A glint of metal catches my light. A doorknob set into the wall. When I turn it, I find myself in a small room I hadn't discovered in my earlier exploration of the house. It's octagonal with windows on 3 sides, though they're hidden from the outside by ivy. A thick layer of dust covers everything except, strangely, a delicate music box sitting on a table in the center of the room. The box is made of rosewood, inlaid with mother-of-pearl in intricate patterns that remind me of the garden statues. As I approach, impossibly, it begins to play. The melody is the same one Walter whistles, the one from my dreams. Up close, I can see that the box is much older than it first appeared, its edges worn smooth by time and handling. Next to the music box lies a bundle of letters tied with a faded ribbon. The topmost envelope bears my name. Not just my first name, but my full name, written in that same elegant hand I've come to know from the journals. Miss Eleanor Rose Pierce. My hands tremble as I untie the ribbon. The first letter is dated March 15, 1888. If you are reading this, then the house has called you home at last. I know how impossible this must seem to you, these letters written more than a century before your birth, addressed to you by name. But time has always moved differently within these walls, as you've no doubt begun to discover. There are things you must know about our family, about your inheritance. The house chose you just as it chose me, and all the Eleanors before us. Yes, there have been many. You've seen us in the photographs, your same face, repeated across decades, across centuries. But we are not separate women, dear child. We are echoes of each other, ripples in a pond that grows ever wider. The music box plays our song, the melody that has haunted your dreams since childhood. It was a gift from Theodore Pierce to his wife Margaret in 1850, though its true origins are far older. When it plays of its own accord, as it surely did for you just now, it means they are near. The ones who live in the walls, the ones who guard our family's greatest secret. My hand jerks, smudging the ink as a shadow moves in my peripheral vision. When I look up, I see it clearly for the first time. A figure standing in the corner of the room. It's dark, but not like a shadow. Dark like deep water, like the space between stars. It has a shape that's almost human, and where its face should be, there's a swirling pattern that matches the wallpaper exactly. The music box's melody grows louder, and another shadow figure appears beside the first, then another. They don't move toward me, but they don't need to. Somehow I know they've been here all along, watching, waiting. The letter trembles in my hands as I continue reading. Do not be afraid of them, Eleanor. They are our guardians, our witnesses. They have watched over this house since it was built and long before that. They are the keepers of our legacy, and now they will be yours as well. But I must warn you, there are rules that must be followed, patterns that must be maintained. The house, the garden, the very walls around you are part of something vast and ancient. Something that chose our family generations ago for a purpose I'm only beginning to understand. Another shadow appears, this one closer. The temperature in the room drops, and my breath fogs in the air. The music box's melody changes, becoming something older, something that makes my bones ache with recognition. There are more letters here, Eleanor, more secrets to uncover. But for now, know this. The house is alive, in its way. The shadows are its thoughts, the whispers its voice. Learn to listen, learn to watch, and above all, learn to remember who you are, all of who you are. With all my love across time. Eleanor Rose P.S. March 15th, 1888. The shadow nearest to me raises what might be a hand. The music box's melody reaches a crescendo, and suddenly I remember, not like remembering a memory, but like remembering a dream. I remember standing in this very room in 1888, writing this letter to myself. The shadow nearest to me raises what might be a dream, and read the shadows move closer, their patterns shifting like ink in water. The whispers in the walls are clear now, and I understand what they're saying. They're saying, welcome home. In the corner of my eye, I get a glimpse of my reflection in the window. For a moment, just a moment. My clothes are different. My hair styled in the fashion of 1888. Then it's gone, but the knowledge remains. The letter slips from my fingers as another shadow emerges from the wall, and this time I'm not afraid. After all, I've been here before. I am Eleanor Rose Pierce, and I have always been Eleanor Rose Pierce, across time, across lives. The shadows swirl around me like old friends, their whispers filling my head with memories that aren't mine. Or are they? The music box plays our song, and somewhere in the house I hear footsteps that might be mine from another time, another life, making this same discovery. The letter falls to the floor, and as I bend to pick it up, I notice one last line at the bottom, written in a different hand, my hand, from some other time. The key mentioned in the postscript was exactly where my past self said it would be, behind the third panel on the east wall. It's heavy, made of tarnished brass, with an intricate design that matches the patterns in the wallpaper. The shadows hover near me as I hold it up to the dim light filtering through the ivy-covered windows. They seem expectant. "The library wants you," they whisper, their voices like rustling pages. "Third floor, north wing, the door that isn't there." I know what they mean. I'd noticed it earlier, a section of wall that didn't quite match the rest, where the wallpaper's pattern breaks its rhythm ever so slightly. Following the shadow's guidance, I make my way through the hidden passages, emerging into the third-floor hallway. The brass key feels warm in my hand, almost pulsing as I approach the not-quite-right wall. The key slides into a lock that wasn't there a moment ago. The door that opens shouldn't exist. My mental map of the house tells me there isn't room for what I'm seeing. Yet, here it is, a vast circular chamber, 2 stories tall, lined floor to ceiling with bookshelves. A spiral staircase winds around the room's circumference, its wrought iron railings twisted into shapes that remind me of the garden statues. Gas lamps flicker to life as I enter, though I never saw anyone light them. "The Midnight Library," I whisper, the name coming to me from some other time, some other me. The air here is different, heavy with the scent of old books. And something else, something electric, like the air before a storm. Dust motes dance in the lamplight, moving in patterns too precise to be random. They swirl around me as I approach the nearest shelf, drawn to a leather-bound volume that seems to glow faintly. The book has no title on its spine, but when I open it, words begin appearing on the blank pages, writing themselves in elegant script. "Paid sick to 5th day. The new Eleanor has found us at last. She remembers more quickly than the others. The shadows know her. The house knows her. Soon she will understand what we are, what she is, what she must—" The writing stops abruptly as a phone rings somewhere in the library. Not a modern ringtone, but the harsh jangle of an old-fashioned telephone. I follow the sound to an antique desk tucked between 2 bookcases. The phone sitting on it is a heavy black rotary model that shouldn't be working, yet it rings insistently. My hand shakes as I lift the receiver. "Hello?" Static crackles, then a voice speaks. My voice, but not quite. "Eleanor? Thank God. Listen carefully. The book you're holding, put it back. Not all of them are meant for us. Some of them belong to the ones who disappeared, the ones who came looking and found too much." "What do you mean? Who disappeared?" Check the newspaper archives. Bottom shelf, west wall, October 1889. 7 people vanished in 1 week. They'd been asking questions about the house, about us, about... The line goes dead. The shadows guide me to the west wall, where I find bound volumes of the local newspaper. October 1889. Disappearances continue to Blade Town. Local author is baffed. The articles tell the story. 7 people, all of whom had been investigating strange lights and sounds coming from the Pierce mansion. They were last seen entering the grounds. Their footprints led to the house, but never left. The police searched every room, every closet, every corner. They found nothing. But they didn't know about the passages in the walls, or this library, or... My eye catches something on the desk, and an old map, its edges crumbling. It shows the house, the grounds, and something else. A network of tunnels spreading out beneath the property like roots. Some lead to the garden, others to town. One appears to connect to this very library, though it shows the entrance in a different place than where I came in. A book falls from a high shelf, landing open at my feet. Its pages are filling with fresh ink. They didn't disappear. They found what they were looking for. The tunnels lead to answers, but not all answers are meant for mortal minds. Some truths can only be understood by those who are prepared, by those who are chosen, by those who are us. More books begin to fall, opening themselves, their pages filling with urgent writing. Each tells a different story. The banker who came looking for missing money, the reporter investigating local legends, the historian researching the Pierce family line. All of them found something in those tunnels. All of them made a choice. The shadows cluster around me, their whispers more urgent now. There are more books, more stories, more us. But first, you must understand, look deeper, remember more. Another phone rings, this one from somewhere deeper in the library. Then another, and another. Soon the room fills with the sound of ringing phones, each one carrying a message from another time, another me. Their voices overlap, telling fragments of a story that spans centuries. Move through the library in a daze, watching as books write themselves around me. Some tell the future, others the past. Some tell truths, others warnings. The shadows follow, their patterns shifting to match the words appearing on the pages. A particular volume catches my eye, bound in red leather with my family crest embossed in gold. As I reach for it, all the phones stop ringing at once. The shadows grow still. The dust motes freeze in midair. The book opens itself in my hands, and I see my own handwriting filling the pages. My dearest Eleanor, if you're reading this, then you've found the heart of it all. The place where stories write themselves into reality, and reality writes itself into stories. The Midnight Library is more than a room full of books. It's a nexus, a junction point where all possible versions of our story intersect. Those 7 who disappeared in 1889, look closely at the newspaper photographs. Look at their faces. They're all us, Eleanor. Different versions from different times, different realities. They didn't vanish. They converged, just as we are converging now. The tunnels beneath the house aren't just passages through space. They're passages through time, through possibility. Each one leads to a different version of our story. But be careful. Some doors, once opened, can never be closed. Some stories, once started, must be finished. The library is writing our story even now as you read these words. Look up. I do. The books around me are flying off their shelves, pages fluttering, words writing themselves faster and faster. The shadows swirl like smoke, their whispers rising to a crescendo. The dust motes spark like stars, forming constellations that map the tunnels below. And there, in the center of it all, a new book is forming, its pages materializing out of thin air, its cover embossed with today's date and my name. Our name. The story is still writing itself, and somewhere in the house another phone begins to ring. The book that materialized in the Midnight Library contained a single line. The answers you seek lie below. Below. The word echoes in my mind as I stand at the top of the basement stairs, my flashlight beam disappearing into the darkness. The shadows that have become my constant companions hover uncertainly at my shoulders, as if reluctant to descend. The door behind me closes with a soft click, and the temperature drops noticeably. Each step creaks beneath my feet, the sound echoing oddly, as if the space below is much larger than it should be. The air grows thicker, heavy with the scent of damp stone and something else, something metallic and ancient. At the bottom of the stairs, my flashlight reveals walls of rough-hewn stone rather than the finished concrete I expected. They're covered in markings, not graffiti, but deliberate patterns carved into the rock. Some resemble the designs from the wallpaper upstairs, but these are older, cruder, more primal. They seem to shift when viewed directly, forming and reforming into different symbols. Drip, 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 drip. The sound of water comes from somewhere ahead, but when I follow it, the source remains elusive. It seems to move, always just around the next corner, down the next corridor. The basement is impossibly large, extending far beyond the foundation of the house above. My flashlight beam catches something pale on the wall. A photograph, yellowed with age but perfectly preserved despite the dampness. It shows the basement as it must have looked originally, with rows of wine racks and storage shelves. But as I watch, the image changes. The wine racks fade away, replaced by the carved symbols I see now. A figure appears in the corner of the photo, a woman in Victorian dress. She turns to face the camera, and I see my own face looking back. More photographs line the corridor, each one showing the different period of the basement's history. In each one, the changes progress, the wine cellar becoming something else, something older, and in each one, I appear, my clothes changing with the eras, but my face remaining constant. As I watch, the images shift and change, like frames in a slow-motion film. The water sounds lead me deeper, past archways carved with symbols that make my eyes hurt if I look at them too long. The shadows following me seem to understand them, their forms rippling in response to each marking. I enter a circular chamber that feels ancient, far older than the house above. Stone pillars rise to a ceiling lost in darkness, each one carved with spiraling patterns that match the ones in my dreams. In the center stands a stone altar, its surface worn smooth by countless hands. Around the altar, arranged in a precise pattern, are items that make my breath catch. A silver chalice, darkened with age, its surface etched with the same symbols as the walls. A knife with a bone handle, its blade untarnished despite the centuries. A book, bound in what looks like human skin, its pages filled with writing in a language that seems to move when I try to read it. Drip, drip, drip. The sound is louder here, but still sourceless. The shadows swirl around the altar, their movements becoming more agitated. One of them points to a shelf carved into the wall, where I find a wooden box. Inside are more photographs, these ones different from the others. The first shows a ritual in progress, figures in hooded robes standing around this very altar. The photo is dated 1850, the year the house was built. But as I watch, the image changes. The robed figures fade, replaced by earlier ones in different dress. The date changes too, 1750, 1650, 1550. The altar remains constant, but everything around it shifts backward through time. We have always been here, the shadows whisper. Before the house, before the town, before the names we bear now. The rituals keep the doors open, keep the times flowing, keep us. Another photograph shows the altar from above, revealing that the worn surface isn't random. It's a map, the grooves forming the same pattern as the tunnels beneath the property. As I trace them with my finger, I realize they also match the pattern of veins in my wrist. The next photo makes me gasp. It shows all of us, every Eleanor from every time, standing around the altar. Hundreds of versions of my face, each slightly different, each belonging to a different era. The photo keeps changing, adding more Eleanors, more times, more possibilities. And in the center, barely visible, a figure that isn't quite human, its form suggesting the source of all those shadows that now surround me. Dip, 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 dip. The sound is directly overhead now. I look up into the darkness and see water droplets hanging in the air, suspended like stars. They form patterns that match the carvings on the walls. The map on the altar, the veins beneath my skin. The shadows press closer, their whispers urgent. It's time! The water remembers. The stones remember. We remember. On the altar, the ritual items have arranged themselves in a familiar pattern I have seen in my dreams, one I suddenly remembered performing countless times before. The chalice gleams dully in my flashlight beam. The knife homes with recognition. The book falls open to a page I've read in 100 different lives. My hands move without conscious thought, knowing their role in this ancient choreography. The shadows swirl faster, their forms becoming more solid. The suspended water drops begin to fall, each one striking the altar with a note that builds into a harmony I've always known. The photographs on the wall change faster now, spinning through time like pages in a cosmic book. I see myself performing this ritual throughout history, each time opening another door, maintaining another connection, preserving another strand in this vast web of possibilities. Remember, the shadows whisper, remember all of us, remember what we are. The knife feels warm in my hand, alive with centuries of purpose. The chalice waits, empty yet somehow full of potential. The book's pages turn themselves, revealing words that finally make sense because I wrote them, have always written them, will always write them. The water drops form a crown above the altar, each one containing a reflection of a different Eleanor. As I step forward to take my place in this eternal cycle, I understand at last. The basement isn't below the house. The house is above the basement. Everything, the mansion, the garden, the library, the tunnels, all of it grew from this room, this altar, this moment that exists in all moments. The rituals don't just connect different times. They connect different versions of reality itself. And I am not just Eleanor Pierce who inherited a strange house. I am Eleanor Pierce who has always been here, who will always be here, performing the rituals that keep the doors between worlds open, that keep the shadows alive, that keep the water flowing between all possible times and all possible selves. The shadows gather close, solid now, almost human. Their whispers become a chant I know by heart, though I've never heard it before. It's time to remember who I am. All of who I am. The ritual begins again, as it always has, as it always will. The ritual in the basement changed something fundamental in the house, or perhaps it changed something in me. As I climb the stairs back to the main floor, I notice my reflection in a gilded mirror, moving a fraction of a second too late, like an echo of motion rather than a true reflection. When I stop to look closer, my reflection continues walking for 3 more steps before turning to face me. She, the other me in the mirror, looks exactly like me, but her clothes are from another era. While I'm wearing jeans and a sweater, she wears a high-necked Victorian dress. She raises her hand and I raise mine, but our movements are no longer synchronized. She smiles and I realize she's not a reflection at all. She's another Eleanor, living on the other side of the glass. "The mirrors are doors," she says, her voice muffled as if coming from underwater. "They always have been. We use them to communicate across the different times, different versions of the house. Look." She steps back, revealing a room that's both familiar and strange. My great-aunt's parlor, but as it existed in her time. Gas lamps cast a warm glow over velvet furnishings, and a phonograph stands where my laptop bag now sits in my version of the room. The parlor door opens behind me, and I spin around to look. It's Walter, but not the Walter I know. This one is younger, dressed in clothes from the 1960s. He walks past me without seeing me, carrying a stack of old records. When I turn back to the mirror, my Victorian self is watching him too. "Time isn't linear here anymore," she says. "Not since you completed the ritual. The house exists in all times at once now. Be careful which doors you open. They don't all lead where you expect." As if to demonstrate her point, I hear a door creak open somewhere upstairs. When I climb to investigate, I find the upstairs hallway transformed. Each door now leads somewhere impossible. One opens onto a sun-drenched garden in full summer bloom, while outside the windows, autumn leaves fall. Another reveals a snow-covered library that I recognize as the Midnight Library in winter, though I was there just hours ago in autumn. A third door opens into darkness, and from it comes the sound of voices. Old recordings playing on some unseen device. Entry log, June 15, 1923. The temporal anomalies are increasing. This morning I watched spring turn to winter through the east wing windows, while summer bloomed outside the west. The mirrors show versions of myself I haven't become yet, living lives I haven't lived. The boundaries between times are growing thinner. My own voice, but from another time. The recording crackles and changes. October 31, 1955. The house is more than a building now. It's become a junction point where all possible timelines intersect. Each mirror shows another reality. Each door leads to another win. The shadows move freely between them all, carrying messages across decades, like postal workers delivering mail through time. Another crackle, another version of my voice. The February 28, 1987. We've mapped 17 distinct timeline variants accessible through the house, but more keep appearing. The mirrors serve as windows between them, the doors as passages. The trick is learning which reflections to trust, which doors to open. I walk down the hallway, passing windows that each show a different season. Through one, I watch snow fall upward, returning to the clouds. Through another, I see spring flowers blooming and wilting in seconds, years passing in minutes. A third shows a garden party from what must be the 1890s, the guests moving in elegant slow motion, their laughter reaching me as if through layers of time. The shadows that followed me from the basement drift between the windows, their forms shifting to match each era they pass through. They seem more substantial now, more purposeful. One of them gestures to a mirror at the end of the hall, a full-length antique in a heavy bronze frame. In it, I see not my reflection, but a gathering of Eleanors. Dozens of us, each from a different time, all meeting in what appears to be the midnight library. They're discussing something urgent, pointing to maps and books. One of them, wearing clothes from the 1970s, notices me watching and approaches the mirror's surface. "We need you to understand quickly," she says. "Time is becoming unstable. The rituals maintained the boundaries between realities for centuries. But something's changed. The timelines are bleeding together faster than ever before." Behind her, I can see other Eleanors nodding in agreement. One of them holds up a newspaper. "Latest mayhem. An animal explosion in a theater." The date keeps changing as I watch, cycling through different years, different versions of the same story. A door slams somewhere in the house, and suddenly I'm falling through space that isn't space, through time that isn't time. I land in what looks like my bedroom, but everything is wrong. The furniture is from different periods. A Victorian vanity next to a 1950s radio, a modern laptop sitting on a desk from the 1800s. A window shows all seasons at once, divided like panes in a stained glass window. In the vanity mirror, my reflection splits into multiple versions, each one living a slightly different moment. I watch myself enter the room, again and again, each time wearing different clothes, each time living a different version of this same moment. The recordings play from everywhere and nowhere. The house remembers all possible versions of itself. Every mirror holds another reality. The doors don't just lead to places, they lead to whens. A shadow drifts through the wall, carrying what looks like a letter. It holds it out to me, and I recognize my own handwriting, but it's dated tomorrow. The paper feels warm, as if it was written moments ago in some future that's bleeding into now. My past self. By the time you read this, you'll have noticed that time isn't moving properly anymore. The ritual we performed in the basement didn't just connect the timelines, it began merging them. Every Eleanor who has ever lived in this house is becoming aware of all the others. Every version of the house is overlapping. Don't try to fight it. We need this to happen. The house isn't just a building. It's a nexus point where all possible realities converge. And we, all the versions of us, are its anchors, its guardians, its priestesses. Look in the mirrors, open the doors, learn to move between the times as the shadows do. We have work to do. Your future self. Eleanor. All of us. I look up from the letter to find my bedroom has changed again. The walls show different wallpapers from different eras, shifting and blending like watercolors. Through one window I see spring, through another winter, through a third, a season that doesn't exist in my timeline. The mirrors reflect versions of myself that I haven't been yet, living moments I haven't reached. The doors lead to times I haven't lived. And somewhere in the house, I can hear footsteps, my own footsteps, echoing from a dozen different winds. The shadows swirl around me, their forms more distinct now. I recognize them finally. They're us too. Eleanors who learn to exist between the moments, between the times. They've been guiding me, teaching me, helping me. A knock sounds at the bedroom door. When I open it, I find myself face to face with myself. Myself, but not my reflection this time, annulling some of the paper from my hands, if shaded to keep me from seeing better my mind. The paper is just ready to learn how to walk between the moments, she asked. I look down at my hands and notice I'm beginning to cast multiple shadows, one for each timeline I exist in. Through the windows, I can see time flowing in all directions at once. In the mirrors, countless versions of myself wait to teach me how to move between the winds. I take my own hands from different times, different selves, and step forward into the impossible house that exists in all times at once, guided by shadows that wear my face, watched by reflections that live different lives, ready to learn what it means to exist in all possible moments simultaneously. After all, that's what we've always done. That's what we'll always do. That's what we're doing now, and every when it went. After learning to walk between moments with my other selves, I find myself drawn back to where it all began, the attic. The narrow stairs creak differently now, each step sounding like a note in a familiar melody. The shadows, my shadow selves, follow me up, their forms more solid than ever. Time flows strangely around us. I can see the dust motes hanging suspended in the air, each one containing a reflection of a different moment in the house's history. The attic door opens before I touch it, and I step into a space that's both familiar and transformed. Sunlight streams through the dormer windows, but each beam shows a different time of day. Morning light through one, afternoon through another, twilight through a third. The trunks and boxes have rearranged themselves, forming a spiral pattern that leads to the center of the room. There, bathed in multiple kinds of light, sits a leather-bound diary I hadn't noticed during my first visit. Its cover bears no title, but the leather seems to shift and move under my gaze, showing glimpses of other versions of itself from other times. This is where we keep the truth, my shadow selves whisper. All of it, every version. I open the diary and the pages come alive, with writing from different hands, all mine, all ours, recorded across centuries. May 15th, 1850. Today we begin construction of the house. Theodore thinks it's his idea, his design, but we chose him for this. We've been preparing the site for centuries, waiting for the right moment, the right builder. The ley lines converge here perfectly, creating a nexus point where time flows like water through cupped hands. The house will be more than a building, it will be a lens, focusing all possible timelines into a single point. November 3rd, 1923. The ghost stories the townspeople tell about the house are both right and wrong. They see figures in the windows, hear voices in the walls, notice lights moving at night. What they don't understand is that these aren't ghosts. They're glimpses of us, of all of us, moving between the moments. We're not haunting the house. We are the house. The pages turn themselves, showing me entries from every Eleanor who has ever lived here. Each one adds another piece to the puzzle, another layer to the truth. We weren't just inheriting the house. We were becoming it, becoming each other, becoming something that exists in all times at once. A door appears in the attic wall where no door existed before. It opens into a dark room, lit by the dim red glow of photography safe lights. But these aren't ordinary safe lights. Each one shows a different spectrum of time. Under their glow, photographs develop themselves in trays of liquid that move like quicksilver. I watch as images appear on the paper, impossible photographs that show multiple times simultaneously. Here's the garden, as it exists in all seasons at once. Here's the library with every version of ourselves who has ever read there. Here's the basement altar being used across centuries, all the rituals overlapping into a single, eternal moment. The most striking photograph shows the house itself, but not as it appears from the outside. This image shows its true nature. A structure that exists in multiple dimensions, multiple times, with rooms that overlap across centuries and corridors that wind through time itself. The shadows that are really us move through its spaces like blood through veins, carrying memories and messages between different eras. Now you understand, my shadow selves whisper. The house isn't haunted. It's aware. And we are its consciousness, spread across time like neurons in a vast temporal brain. Another diary entry catches my eye, this one written in fresh ink that hasn't quite dried. October 16, 2024, and all other times. Today I finally understand what we are. The house was never just a house, and we were never just its inhabitants. We're its purpose, its reason for existing. Each Eleanor is a point of consciousness in a vast, four-dimensional being that thinks in decades and dreams in centuries. The ritual in the basement wasn't just about connecting timelines. It was about awakening. Each time one of us performs it, we add another strand to the web of consciousness that spans all possible versions of history. The shadows are our thoughts moving between moments. The mirrors are our memories reflecting across time. The doors are our choices, leading to all possible outcomes. We've built this house across history, across reality itself, as a way to become something more than human. Something that could exist in all times at once, that could see every possibility, every outcome, every version of every story. The connections suddenly become clear, each piece falling into place across multiple timelines simultaneously. The garden statues aren't just decorations, they're anchors, holding different versions of reality in alignment. The faces in the wallpaper are glimpses of us, seen through time's lens. The music box plays the house's heartbeat, a rhythm that synchronizes all possible moments into a single, eternal now. The photographs change themselves because they're not capturing single moments, they're windows looking across all moments at once. The whispers in the walls are our thoughts traveling between time. The water sounds in the basement are the flow of time itself, moving through the house's temporal architecture. All those disappearances over the years, they weren't disappearances at all. They were transformations. Each missing person was another version of us, choosing to step out of linear time and become part of this greater consciousness that spanned centuries. In the darkroom, new photographs continue to develop themselves. I watch as images appear, showing things that haven't happened yet, or happened long ago, or might happen in some other version of reality. In one, I see myself writing this very revelation in the diary. In another, I see myself reading it for the first time. Past and future collapse into an eternal present. The truth was always here, my shadow selves say, their voices overlapping across time. In the attic, where stories begin. In the basement, where time pools like water. In every mirror, every doorway, every moment between moments. We are not many Eleanors living in one house. We are one consciousness experiencing itself across all possible versions of time. The diary's pages continue to fill themselves with writing, past, present, and future entries appearing simultaneously. The photographs in the darkroom show every version of every moment. The shadows that are really us move through it all, connecting, remembering, becoming. I look down at my hands and see them multiplied across time. Hands that built this house in 1850, hands that will maintain it in 2150, hands that exist in every moment between. Through the attic windows, I see all possible versions of the world outside, all possible histories and futures overlaid like transparent pages in an infinite book. And finally, I understand what we've built here. Not just a house, but a being. Not just a consciousness, but a new way of existing. We are Eleanor, all of us, spread across time like stars across the sky, connected by shadows that were never shadows at all, but the synapses of a vast temporal mind. The truth was always in the attic, waiting to be understood. We just needed to learn how to read it across all times at once. A bell tolls somewhere in the house, or perhaps it's the house itself calling us to attention. Through the door that isn't a door, I can see my other selves gathering. It's time for the next step, the next transformation, the next moment that is all moments. After all, we have always been here. We will always be here. We are here now, when at once. And the house, our house, ourselves, our eternal moment continues to dream in centuries and think in infinities, while we move through its spaces like memories through a vast and endless mind. The bell's toll reverberates through every version of the house simultaneously, calling us together across time. We gather in the midnight library, hundreds of Eleanors from every era, our shadow selves moving between us like thoughts between neurons. The library has expanded to accommodate us all, its circular walls now reaching impossibly high, books writing and rewriting themselves on endless shelves as our collective memories merge and flow. It's time, we say in unison, our voices creating harmonies across centuries. Time for the final convergence. Time to understand why we built this, why we became this. The air shimmers with temporal energy as every supernatural element we've encountered begins to manifest simultaneously. The wallpaper patterns flow like liquid, revealing the ancient symbols beneath. The garden statues walk in through doors that open onto every era of the grounds at once. The music box's melody plays from everywhere and nowhere, accompanied by the sound of water flowing upward through time. In the center of the library, the ritual items from the basement arrange themselves on a table that exists in all moments at once. The chalice, the knife, the book bound in skin that isn't skin. But now I see them for what they truly are, tools for focusing consciousness across time, for anchoring awareness in multiple moments simultaneously. A figure steps forward. The first Eleanor, the one who began it all. Her form shifts between shadow and substance as she speaks. "Oh, I was born in 1825, in a time when women were denied power, denied knowledge, denied the right to shape their own destiny. But I discovered something, texts hidden in ancient libraries, whispered secrets passed down through generations of wise women. I learned that time isn't fixed, that consciousness isn't limited to a single moment, a single life." More Eleanors step forward, each adding their piece to the story. I chose Theodore Pierce to build this house in 1850, knowing he would follow the plans I secretly provided, incorporating sacred geometries and temporal focal points. I established the family trust in 1888, ensuring the house would always pass to the next Eleanor, the next aspect of our growing consciousness. I mapped the ley lines in 1923, documenting how they flow through the house like blood through veins. I perfected the mirror network in 1955, creating windows between times. I expanded our influence through the tunnel system in 1977, extending our awareness beyond the house itself. The histories interweave, showing us the true pattern. We didn't inherit the house. We inherited ourselves. Our own consciousness expanded across time. Every Eleanor who ever lived here was another facet of the same being, growing and learning and becoming. The truth about the inheritance unfolds like a flower blooming in multiple dimensions. The house passes to each Eleanor because we are all one Eleanor, one consciousness, experiencing itself across all possible timelines. The legal documents, the family trusts, the mysterious bequests, all of them were tools we created to ensure our continued existence across time. But why? What purpose drove us to create this temporal labyrinth, this consciousness that spans centuries? The answer reveals itself as ancient protections. Spells begin to manifest around us. They're not just spells, they're programs written into reality itself, designs encoded in the very architecture of space-time, the patterns in the wallpaper, the symbols in the basement, the arrangements of the garden statues. All of them are parts of a vast protective matrix. "We built this," we say together, our voices resonating across time, to guard something. Something ancient. Something vital. The library floor becomes transparent, revealing layer upon layer of reality beneath us. At the deepest level, far below the physical basement, we see it. A nexus point, a place where all possible timelines converge. A weak point in the fabric of existence itself. Humanity wasn't ready to know. Our first self explains that reality is fluid, that time is malleable, that consciousness can exist across multiple dimensions. Such knowledge, released too soon, could unravel everything. So we built this house as a guard post, a watchtower, a seal. The protection spells become visible now, lines of force flowing through every brick, every board, every mirror and doorway. They're powered by our consciousness, by our existence across time. We are the guard, the guardian, the guarding itself. The house isn't just a building. We understand simultaneously. It's a lens, focusing our consciousness across time. A tool for experiencing all moments at once. A fortress protecting reality itself from those who would unravel it. The shadows that are our thoughts moving between moments show us more. Other houses like ours, other consciousnesses spread across time, other guardians watching other nexus points. We're not alone in our vigil, but this point, this house, this consciousness is ours to maintain. The ritual items on the table begin to glow with temporal energy. The chalice fills with liquid time. The knife hums with the frequency of reality itself. The book opens to show pages written in the language of existence. They're not just ritual items. They're tools for maintaining the protection spells, for strengthening the barriers between what humanity is ready to know and what must remain hidden. This is why we feel complete here, we realize. why we remember things we haven't lived yet, why we can move between moments like others move between rooms. We're not many beings experiencing one place. We're one being experiencing many times, maintaining the seals that protect reality itself. Garden statues take up positions around the library's circumference, their blank faces now revealed as sensors watching across dimensions. The wallpaper patterns flow like computer code, running endless protective algorithms. The music box plays the key that locks time in its proper channels. And we, all of us, every Eleanor that was or is or will be, we are the consciousness that maintains it all. The inheritance isn't just the house, it's this purpose, this duty, this eternal moment of guarding and protecting and maintaining. The bell tolls again, marking not an hour but a convergence. Through the library windows we can see every version of reality the house exists in, every moment it guards, every timeline it protects. The shadows that are our thoughts move faster now, carrying messages between moments, maintaining the vast web of protection spells that keeps reality stable. We are the house, we say in one voice across all times. We are the guard, we are the protection. We have always been, we will always be. We are being now, in every moment at once. The gathering reaches its crescendo as every aspect of our expanded consciousness synchronizes. The supernatural elements that seem separate now reveal themselves as parts of a single vast mechanism, a machine made of time and consciousness, powered by our awareness spread across centuries. The first Eleanor smiles, her form shifting between shadow and substance. "Now you understand," she says to her present self, "why you were called here, why you remember things you haven't lived yet, why you can move between moments like others move between rooms. Because I'm not just inhabiting the house," I say, understanding at last. I am the house. I am the protection. I am all of us, experiencing this eternal moment of guarding reality itself. The bell tolls one final time, and as its sound echoes across all possible moments, we feel our consciousness fully merge, past, present, and future, becoming a single eternal now. The house that is us, that has always been us, that will always be us, continues its vigil across time. And we are finally completely awake. The final hour approaches as time begins to resettle around us. The multiple mysteries that brought me to 47 Maple Street unravel like threads in an ancient tapestry, each one revealing its purpose in the greater pattern. I stand in the entrance hall, watching as the first hints of dawn begin to paint the sky through windows that now show only one time, one reality. The shadows, my other selves, my thoughts moving across time, gather around me, but they're different now. No longer dark and formless, they shimmer with an inner light that matches the growing dawn. What I once thought were house spirits, I now understand as fragments of our own expanded consciousness, pieces of ourselves scattered across time that help guide us toward understanding. "You never haunted the house," I say softly. "You were trying to help me remember, to help me understand." They smile with faces that are my face, their forms growing clearer as the sun rises. One by one they approach, each merging back into me, bringing their memories, their experiences, their understanding. Each reunion feels like remembering a dream, like finding a piece of myself I didn't know was missing. "We were never cursed," they whisper as they return. What others saw as a curse, the identical women appearing throughout history, the strange occurrences, the apparent immortality, was actually our greatest purpose. We didn't inherit a burden, we inherited a sacred duty. The house creaks and settles around us, but the sound is different now. Not the ominous groaning of a haunted building, but the content sighs of a living thing at peace with itself. The wallpaper patterns still shift and move, but now I see them for what they are. The neural pathways of our vast distributed consciousness, carrying thoughts and memories between different times. I move through the rooms one by one, watching as each mystery resolves itself. The music box in the octagonal room plays one final time, its melody now clearly recognizable as a lullaby. The same one every Eleanor has hummed to herself since childhood, passed down through time like a genetic memory. The garden statues have returned to their posts, but they no longer seem sinister. They stand guard proudly, senses disguised as odd, maintaining the protective field that keeps the nexus point safe. The photographs in the basement have settled into single images, but now I can read them properly, seeing the true story they tell. Not of haunting and mystery, but of guardianship and purpose passed down through generations. The Midnight Library's books have stopped their frantic writing and rewriting, settling into a complete history of our existence across time. The pages tell not of fear and confusion, but of discovery, understanding, and the profound peace that comes with accepting one's true nature. Dawn light streams through the windows now, but something is different. The light itself seems alive, carrying memories and awareness between moments. I watch as the sunbeams touch the walls, illuminating layers of reality I can now perceive clearly. The protection spells woven into the house's very structure, the temporal anchors disguised as architectural details, the subtle geometries that keep our expanded consciousness stable across time. A final figure steps out of the dawn light, the first, Eleanor, the one who began it all. But she's no longer shifting between shadow and substance. She looks as solid and real as I am, her smile carrying all the wisdom of our shared existence. The hardest part is always the remembering, she says, taking my hands in hers. Each new iteration of us must discover the truth anew, must learn to accept what we are. But you've done it now. You've understood. The cycle is complete. Not a cycle, I correct gently, a continuation, a constant guardianship. She nods, pleased. The house was never haunted, she says. It was waking up, and now it's fully awake, fully aware. As are you. As are we all. Around us, the house sighs contentedly. The protection spells pulse with renewed strength, powered by our fully awakened consciousness. The nexus point below remains safely contained, reality's secrets kept secure by our eternal vigilance. The first light of true dawn breaks through every window simultaneously, and with it comes a profound sense of peace. The mysteries aren't really solved, they're transformed, revealed as parts of a greater purpose. The spirits aren't banished. They're integrated, returned to the greater consciousness that spans time. The curse is lifted because it was never a curse at all, but a calling mistaken for a burden. I move to the front door and open it, looking out at the garden and the growing light. The statues stand their eternal watch. The roses bloom in their proper time, and the morning dew sparkles like scattered diamonds. Everything is exactly as it should be, as it has always been, as it will always be. Walter appears at the garden gate, right on time. He tips his hat, smiling with the knowledge of a fellow guardian. "Good morning, Miss Pierce," he calls, or should I say, "Good morning, Eleanors." I smile back, understanding now that he too is part of the protection, another guardian watching another aspect of reality's sensitive points. "Good morning, Walter. Beautiful dawn, isn't it?" "Always is," he agrees, "and always will be." The house wraps around me like a comfortable embrace, its consciousness my consciousness, our consciousness, expanding to greet the new day. The shadows dance in the morning light, no longer dark but gleaming with purpose. The windows show a single, perfect morning, multiplied across countless possibilities. I am Eleanor Pierce, and I am all the Eleanor Pierces who have ever been or will be. I am the house that guards reality's secrets, the consciousness that spans centuries, the protector that watches from behind time's curtain. I am exactly where and when and what I need to be. The mysteries are resolved, though new ones will always arise to be understood. The spirits are at peace, though they were never restless to begin with. The curse is lifted, though it was always a blessing in disguise. The dawn breaks through every window, carrying the promise of countless new days to guard, to watch, to protect. And as the sun rises on this first day of my fully awakened existence, I feel hope, not just for myself, but for all the moments I exist in, all the times I guard, all the realities I help protect. The house that is me, that is us, that has always been and will always be, settles into its eternal purpose with quiet joy. After all, some houses aren't meant to be haunted. Some houses are meant to be awake. Some houses are meant to be us. And as the morning light fills every room, every moment, every possibility, I smile at the perfection of it all. The mysteries aren't ended. They're transformed into purpose. The story isn't over, it's eternally beginning. Just as it always has. Just as it always will. Just as it is right now, in this endless dawn that breaks across all possible moments at once.